says, Starmer's saying he wants to spend our money in all these areas to improve them. Well, how about not dumping thousands of people into our towns and turning them into no-go areas? How can I have pride in my town when I'm afraid to take my granddaughters to town? Darryl in Blackburn. Mike, nothing screams Keir Starmer's patriotism like surrendering Chagos and surrendering our borders. Yeah, absolutely right. Now he claims he wants to somehow reclaim the flag. Steve says this, who will host this ID card data? The government? Are they going to build a load of new data centres or contract Microsoft to do it, who have the expertise in infrastructure? Great show, by the way. But let's get a voice note from Lee on ID cards.
Morning, Mike. Lee from Chelmsford. Digital ID cards will be a complete waste of time. By the time they roll it out, technology would have moved on, and whatever they say it's going to cost, they might as well treble it. I mean, Rachel Reeves has already borrowed £83 billion this year. How much is this going to cost? It's never going to stop illegal immigration. The only way you can do that is turning the boats back. Anyway, all the best.
Yeah, absolutely right. I don't think anybody's going to stop illegal immigration with ID cards. There's not a chance. And to say that, we've learned from Emmanuel Macron, who says that that's the way to stop illegal migration. Well, if that's true, then how come there's so many illegal migrants in France, where they have digital ID? We could ask Gavin Mortimer, French correspondent of The Spectator. Gavin, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Yeah, I was just about to make that point, actually, listening to some of what you've been saying. There was about 1 million illegal immigrants in France, crimes out of control, the North African drug gangs are running major cities. So, yeah, ID cards, clearly the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, apart from being the most unpopular man in France, Emmanuel Macron's played an absolute blinder. But I'll tell you what, Nicolas Sarkozy, the story broke when we were on the air yesterday. He's still got a bit of star power. He's on the front pages here in London. Daily Mail's got him on the front, given 5 years in jail. Will Carla Bruni be next? Times has got him on the front page as well. It's quite a story, this.
It is. I've got a piece in the Telegraph today saying that it's another example of France's red judges out of control.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, earlier this year, Marine Le Pen was disqualified from political life for 5 years. In 2017, the strong favourite to win the presidential election was Francois Fillon, who was a member of Sarkozy's centre-right party. And then very quickly, a story broke of financial impropriety, and that ruined his campaign. So there's really, and this is Sarkozy's line, that this is another example of a socialist deep state, which exists and runs most of the institutions. Politically, the socialists have imploded. They've only got 66 MPs, but since 1968 they've been marching through the institutions. They now control everything from the Supreme Court to the mainstream media, and they've never liked Sarkozy, and this is a culmination of a 13-year campaign to get him.
Right, and will they get him? I mean, I was hearing yesterday that he has to go to prison regardless of an appeal, which is a bit unusual. So he's likely to be locked up in any event, right?
Well, this is it, and this is one of the. So he was 4 charges. He was cleared on 3 of them, including embezzlement and corruption, but he was found guilty of associating with wrongdoers, and for that he's got a 5-year sentence, and it's something called an execution provisoire, which also was applied to Marine Le Pen, which means that the sentence has to be applied immediately, even if there's an appeal process. So often the sentence is suspended, sort of it's in limbo while the appeal is heard, that can last for some time, and it's normally used only for very dangerous criminals or terrorists who might flee the country. That's obviously not the case with Sarkozy or Le Pen, so it's another reason why the centre-right and the right see a socialist plot.
Are you suggesting that some of these charges don't stand up then? Because it says, I'm reading the piece here, February, Sarkozy was placed under house arrest for a year in order to wear an ankle tag after being convicted of trying to bribe a judge in a separate fraud case. He's also been given a 1-year jail sentence for illegally funding his failed 2012 presidential campaign, but has also appealed against that. And the main charges here is that he sent 2 diplomats, I think, to Libya to sort of negotiate some kind of financial deal with Gaddafi. Are you saying that that's a bit of a trumped-up charge?
Well, that's what he was cleared of actually taking any money, but he was accused of association with malfaiteurs, so with wrongdoers, so sort of conspiring, but not actually going through with it.
Right.
And again, the 5 years. I mean, there's no doubt that, as you mentioned his previous cases, that he has dubious ethics, but then he's not the first French politician.
He's a politician. I mean, let's face it.
Well, exactly, yeah. So it's also about the 5 years, which is more than some of the people convicted of aiding and abetting the Bataclan terrorists in 2015 when they slaughtered 130 people. They got shorter sentences than that. And the left have never like Sarkozy, and it was mutual. During his presidency, he said there were too many judges of mediocrity, and there was a protest against him. It's also interesting that the judge who convicted him yesterday was the same judge who convicted François Fillon in 2017.
Fascinating. And what about the Carla Bruni sort of scenario? Is she likely to be investigated now? Is she next?
I don't think so, no. It's very funny. I don't know if you've seen the clip, Mike, yesterday, that when Sarkozy came out of the court after the verdict and he said this was a witch hunt and he was innocent, etc. Carla Bruni was next to him, and there were all the microphones there with their, those little foam heads with their radio stations or organizations. And she reached forward and took the Mediapart microphone. Mediapart is a left-wing newspaper that has really conducted this campaign against Sarkozy, and threw it to the ground. So that was clear that what she thinks of them. Several other people were in the dock with Sarkozy. Carla Bruni wasn't one of them, and I'll be surprised if she's convicted of anything.
Quite a story though. Fantastic stuff. Gavin, good to see you again. Thank you very much indeed. Gavin Mortimer, French correspondent of The Spectator there. Carla Bruni, a bit of a temper on her. Don't think you want to cross her, would you? Morning, Mike. Love the show as always, says David. I'm just wondering if the public will be charged for these ID cards like they do passports. Very good point. I mean, I suppose technically if it's an app, which is what it sounds like it's meant to be, the app surely would be free, because that's what the NHS app is, I think, and that's what the other apps were during COVID. You didn't have to pay for them. But again, you just don't know. Somebody will be making money out of it, because even, remember when they used to say, when it comes to things like Facebook and Twitter and all the other social media platforms, it's you that is the actual, you're not the customer, you're the product. So what happens is that this data will be collected by the government and given to God knows who. I mean, we asked the question when Donald Trump was here, whether or not these data centres that we're getting supposedly implanted into Britain, tiny, tiny number, by the way, compared to how many are being put all over the place in America. But, in what regard have we given up some of our data in order for these American companies to come in and put their data centres here? Because it may well be that they'll have access to all sorts of personal and private information. And if we've got an ID card which carries that private information, Colin Sutton, playing off the former police detective, has put out on Twitter, will they include your fingerprints and your DNA? Well, they might do, and then who's got access to that? That's the problem. Anne from Kent says, as an older British citizen, this ID card world will exclude the elderly, as many do not want to embrace the digital world. And many of them wouldn't be able to anyway. Darryl from Lincoln says, Mike, actually Tony Blair running the Gaza Strait isn't a bad idea. If he does for them what he did here, then in 20 years they'll be flooded with immigrants, hopefully back from here. Yeah, it's not a bad thought, actually. It could completely ruin their economy as well by completely changing the way everything's done. Anne says this, regarding ID, 20 years ago I was working for a big company and can remember everybody had to take their passport into the office and have it photocopied as proof that we were legally allowed to work. This is nothing new. Well, some people do it, some people don't, right? Let's get a voice note from Phil.
Hey, Mike, Phil from Nottingham. ID cards, you know where they can stick those. But the person I want to lavish my praise upon is Tony Blair. I mean, my God, it's years since he's been Prime Minister and he's still running the country. Love him or hate him, and I'm no fan. I've got to give it to him. Impressive work.
It's very true. I mean, how the hell, as I said earlier to Ray Pardo Mancu, how does a guy who, to all intents and purposes, yes, took part in a revolution in this country when he got in 1997, modernised Britain in such a way, changed the way that an awful lot of the institutions worked, completely reinvented the judicial system, invented the Supreme Court, completely changed immigration, managed to get people to come in here from the European Union, from Eastern Europe, from all sorts of parts of the world, to stock up on the education system, to completely manage the education system and turn it into a business so that millions and millions of people made a bucket load of money, and it was harder and harder for English students to go without getting into massive debt, to completely ruin the economy, leave it in tatters with Gordon Brown selling off all the gold at the bottom, cheapest price that he could get, and then to fail as a Middle East peace envoy, to fail to get a job as an EU commissioner, to now want to run the Gaza Strip. It really is quite remarkable. And in the background, by the way, run the current Labour government. Get his old mate Peter Mandelson made a US ambassador to the United States of America. Make sure that Andy Burnham gets back in to a cabinet position and possibly Prime Minister. Gets Keir Starmer to be the patsy for all of it. You know, gets Pat McFadden, a man who was in his own government, to be the enforcer in the new government. It's quite remarkable, the web that Tony Blair has created, which apparently cannot be broken down. He's also got Alistair Milburn back in as an advisor in the health department. I mean, the list goes on and on. I didn't even know I knew all this stuff.